Ubisoft has had quite a bit of different struggles recently, very recently in fact. They had like Star Wars Outlaws kind of underperform, they've had kind of drama with the new Assassin's Creed game, that got pushed back. They've also had layoffs, and among all of it, they quite recently had a dip in their stock. That was kind of something that I guess was an overall reflection of their recent struggles, but you know, something that actually happened way before all of this stuff with like Assassin's Creed, Star Wars Outlaws, all of that stuff was a little game called The Crew. Now, you might remember in December of last year, this game was very much talked about because at the time it had been around for about 9 years. It's basically a racing game. It's like an open world type of game. I don't want to call it an MMORPG. I don't think it's something like that open world, but it was an always online type of game. And in December of last year, so just about 11 months ago, it was actually shut down for good. Now, this has happened in the past with different types of games like this, but this caused enough of a sort of backlash from its fans and its players that it was actually the starting point to the movement that is now called Stop Killing Games. Yeah, that is very much alive and still going, very strong. You can sign their petition even if you live in the European Union. It's just literally on stopkillinggames.com. So yeah, it caused a whole situation, I guess you could call it, where people were very frustrated with Ubisoft because they had actually purchased this game, some when it came out in 2014, others later on, and now you're saying that it's just shut down, and there's not even like an offline mode. I mean, it's just done. It's one thing if it's a game that you pay a certain amount for each month. Like I talked about, you know, stuff like this has happened in the past with games that you pay like a monthly fee for, you know, sometimes it'll just get shut down. Like I'm thinking like classic RuneScape or like the classic WoW servers. That kind of makes sense because you pay it on a monthly or yearly basis. But like in this case, people really took issue to the fact that this was just kind of a one-time flat fee, and it was kind of thought that, you know, you'd always be able to play it because it's just a video game. But now all of a sudden they were saying, nope, that goes out the window, and that obviously led to the Stop Killing Games movement. Now, I wondered at the time, and there was some conversation of it, about like, hey, is this going to lead to maybe some sort of legal action? Well, it has just come out today that is actually the case. That is actually happening right now. A lawsuit has been filed by two gamers in California, and essentially what they are alleging is kind of what I mentioned before, basically that Ubisoft sold them this game under the guise that it would stay up, you know, indefinitely, but that now it has been shut down and that there was really no disclaimer saying that they could shut down whenever they wanted to. And the thing is, yeah, these are just two guys, but they're representing much more than just themselves. They're not just trying to get a refund for themselves. See, when Ubisoft shut down The Crew, they did actually offer refunds to gamers, but only to gamers who had recently purchased it. So not the ones that, you know, maybe bought it on launch day or a few years later. I don't exactly know where the cutoff was between recent and not recent. So in this lawsuit, these two gamers are basically saying that they're representing all of the gamers who owned a copy of The Crew and who did not get a refund from Ubisoft. Because essentially they say that, hey, if you owned a copy of it, you should have the right to be able to play it indefinitely because, according to them, there has never been a disclaimer that said that Ubisoft could shut it down when they wanted to. Now, I kind of wanted to look into this to see what the numbers would be, but there's no like definite source that I can find that has actual sales numbers for The Crew, at least from what I could find, like recent numbers. All I could find was a page from 2019 from Ubisoft. It said that at that time, The Crew had a community of 21 million players. Now, I'm assuming the refunds they gave people when they shut it down in 2023 didn't include anything at or before 2019. Since these refunds were only for people who purchased it recently, I'm sure they didn't consider recently over 3 or 4 years ago. So I say all of this to say that if you do the math, you know, if this lawsuit is actually successful for these two Californian gamers, and if Ubisoft does have to somehow find a way to refund 21 million players, probably more actually, because I'm sure there were more that bought the game between 2019 and like 2021, 22. But let's just say it is 21 million players that they have to refund. I mean, you do the math. I mean, let's say that it was an average of, let's just be very generous here and say it was an average of $20 per copy that was purchased. Again, that's very generous. I'm sure this was a $60 game most of the time. Assuming it was $20 a copy, that would mean that Ubisoft would have to refund refund $420 million US. Now, that being said, I'm sure Ubisoft has got great lawyers. I'm sure they have a better way of navigating the legal system than these two Californian gamers, but who knows, I guess crazier things have happened. And what I think is interesting is what this could mean for kind of the future of games like The Crew if this lawsuit is successful. It would make a lot of game developers and publishers really reconsider a sort of model like this where they're fine with just abandoning it after a few years when the game isn't as popular and they don't want to keep the server up to maintain their own costs. They're gonna have to somehow find a way to either keep that game up or make an offline mode when it's shut down, or just simply have maybe some disclaimers that say that they have the right to shut it down whenever they want to. I'm sure that could lead to a lot less sales as well. Kind of like how The Crew started the Stop Killing Games movement, I think that this lawsuit, especially if it does go through and is successful for these two gamers, I think the implications are very, very big, and it could change the model of a lot of these games going forward.